I'm Karen Schubert with CNSnews.com, and I was wondering, maybe Mr. Glessner or maybe one of the MDs, but since you have like doctors and nurses and you operate medical equipment, will you be required to keep electronic health care records just like mainstream hospitals under the new regulations?
What new regulations? There's about 5 bills out there.
Oh yeah, sure. It was bill in February, but sorry.
So we will find out. Currently, interesting enough though, HIPAA does not apply to pregnancy centers unless they electronically transfer financial data. And now we've urged our centers at our medical clinics to voluntarily comply anyway with HIPAA, simply because it's good practice, but it does not actually apply. You know, we'll wait and see what's going to come out of Congress, and makes me a little nervous. I don't know. Did you have a comment?
Thank you.
Are we live? I'm Peter Shea with ProLifeNews.tv. It's on. Okay. I know this is a little bit off the beaten trail here, but we're out in the field a lot as far as pro-life movement goes. We go off the abortion mills, we hand out flyers, sidewalk counseling, and so on. And one of the places we like to refer people to, of course, are the crisis pregnancy centers. And one of the difficulties we have is that there's a disconnect between the CPCs and the people in the field. How can that be better solved? So often I've heard from people, and I can send you emails from people who say that if they volunteer for a crisis pregnancy center, they're not allowed to go out to the abortion mills. And like I say, there's a disconnect there. And you know, if you're not aware of this, who can we speak to help solve this? And if you are, then how can we resolve this problem?
There is. Oh. Because our pregnancy centers are all separate incorporated entities, 501c3s, aside from the standards and recommended policies that we provide as networks, Heartbeat, CareNet, and NIFLA, we are not necessarily in control of all of their policies and how they operate. And because we're community-based, I think the answer to that is in a particular community, if that happens to be a problem or an issue, you know, that needs to be resolved by the people there. At talking to each other, open communication. Our mission is, of course, to the client, to the person who comes through our doors, calls us on the phone, is connected through Option Line, and so forth. And those women that are leaving abortion clinics, we certainly want to serve them. We certainly want to serve them. So I think it's very important at the local level for dialogue to take place to resolve that situation. Anyone want to add anything? Tom?
Yeah, let me tell you a little story. A few years back, there was a pregnancy center in Florida. It was during the Operation Rescue days, and a volunteer at the center was driving to the center to do her volunteer work that day, and there was a rescue outside an abortion clinic. She pulls over her car, and she's standing outside, and then a reporter comes up and says, "What do you think about this?" And she says, "I think it's wonderful. I work at the pregnancy center." The next thing you know, a lawsuit was filed against everybody, including that center, because her comment was in the paper. Now, I say this only to show this is the extreme what lawyers do sometimes. They like to pull everybody into a lawsuit. Our advice to centers is not to discourage activism outside a clinic or picketing or anything like that, but to make a distinction that when a volunteer from a center is doing that, they're doing it as a volunteer individually and as not part of the center. Only to give the center a little insulation from that type of abuse of a lawsuit. The end result of that lawsuit was the center got out of it because they had a pretty aggressive lawyer, but they had to hire a lawyer to get out of it. And so we try to make a distinction here between individual activism, which is encouraged, I've done it myself, and center-sponsored activities that might pull them into a lawsuit that's just a waste of time and a real headache to try to get out of.
I just wanted to make an additional comment that a significant portion, I'm not sure how much, of the clients that we serve in the pregnancy centers are actually rescued and brought by the workers who are at the abortion clinics. So in a way, we have the same goal, and that is to help the mother and the child so that we work with them when the women come. And as an example of a coalition, if you would, in Jackson, Mississippi, currently, we occupy the same physical structure. So there are places where centers are working together, but still there's a distinction between what you're doing when you're where.
I think too that there's a recognition too, I think, on all of our parts that we all have the same goals, and that is the life of the mother and the child, but maybe we have different parts of the pie. And although, you know, as Tom said, individual activism, we would never discourage that. We want to be sure that we are able, as Peggy said, to really provide the services and the care and compassion and that very non-judgmental approach to our clients. And sometimes those two intersect with what's going on in the field. And sometimes I think we say, and some of our centers say, you know, we're not called to that particular thing, but we are called, but we support what's going on, we support what's happening, and as you say, many of those women come through the doors of our center, but maybe we have just a little different piece of the pie.
Penny Star again with CNS News. I'm sure you're aware of the petition drives that are going on that are asking people in the public square to sign a petition against pregnancy resource centers because they claim they're lying to clients and they're using scare tactics to make, and they're really, it's a huge, I mean, I see them on weekends, and I wondered what you're doing to try to get the message out, your message out.
I'll just comment briefly, and I know many others have much to say about this. First of all, we are entirely committed to truth in advertising. We train our centers. Tom does great work, our legal department, Peggy. We have lawyers on staff. We have everybody working on this because we are committed to truth in advertising, what we do in our centers and what we do not do. We provide limited medical centers with licensed, trained physicians, and the commitment for care and confidence, all of our legal training, so much of our training is devoted to truth and integrity in what we do. We're not going to stop these things from coming, but I know that Tom and others will have many comments on how successful we've been because we do stand for truth and integrity in our centers. And our numbers are growing.